Hey everyone, this is Ben with Jack Wolf Knives, and I encourage you to watch the other two videos on my website and YouTube channel that discuss the reasons not to disassemble your knife. I also have a video on how to routinely maintain your knife without disassembly. I think that's important context before you watch this one. Now, I understand that people are going to take these knives apart. I understand that people want to see what's on the inside. And so I think as far as a learning resource goes, a video showing this knife disassembled is going to be useful for folks. But a couple things here. Number one, I've been through this several times and I still struggle with putting them back together sometimes. And number two, it's really just not worth the frustration in my opinion. So keep that in mind as we proceed. So what are the things we're going to need? Well, it's always nice to have some kind of mat. This is just a giant mouse pad and it's served me really well over the years. Really smart to have some kind of tray to put screws and parts in. And we definitely need what are called Torx bits. There's three sizes we're going to need for this job: T6, T8, and T10. For anybody not familiar, Torx is not the same as Allen. These are star-shaped bits that are required to do this job. And the best Torx bits are made by a brand called Weha, in my opinion. They're made in Germany, they're precision ground, and cheap bits will do nothing but frustrate you and damage your fasteners and your expensive knives. So invest in some good bits. You obviously also need a driver. This Weha driver came with this kit. I got this kit on Amazon. You don't need all these to do this job, but kind of a cool thing to have in your arsenal if you start to get into tinkering at all. So let's begin. We'll start with removal of the micarta. So these two fasteners here are T8 and your bits are marked, if you can see that. We'll just go ahead and take this and be careful when you get them in there so you don't scratch everything up. There goes one. See, came out. I'm going to put it in my little tray. And then here's another. Let's get this other one out. Oop. Kind of hard to line them up just right sometimes. Okay, there goes the other. There it goes, number two. Here's what they look like. Okay, and here's what it looks like underneath the micarta. So one thing I want to point out here is that this is numbered 002, and this is numbered 002. That is not for the sake of serializing the parts. When these knives are made, they're assembled as a unit like this, and then they're ground and shaped by a skilled craftsman to give all these nice, smooth, and seamless transitions between materials. But when you do that, these parts become mated for life. So these parts cannot just be thrown into parts bins and pulled out for rapid assembly. Once these operations are completed in the manufacturing process, these parts are mated to each other for life. So that's one of the features of Jack Wolf Knives, is all the skilled hand labor involved. So we've now exposed the two screws that are underneath the micarta. You can see the bores where the micarta is screwed in. So next thing we're going to do is remove these three screws here. 1, 2, and the pivot. So let's take this here and let's remove these. So now in order to remove these, we're going to need a T6, and in order to remove the pivot, we're going to need a T10. So I'll start with the pivot. Now on your knife, this pivot is going to be secured with a thread locking compound. It has not been performed on this knife because this was a pre-production sample, and so I requested they did not lock these down so that I could take them apart as needed. Now, you will be able to, in most circumstances, break the bond from the glue in these threads with hand strength. Sometimes you can't, and in that case, you're gonna have to apply heat. I recommend a torch, like a butane or propane torch. Do not apply the flame directly to this knife. Keep it a good distance away and don't hold it in one place for too long. If that's something you're not comfortable with, then you should probably stop here. Also realize that this pivot assembly, this screw and the barrel that's in between are 3 individual pieces. So even if you can get your driver in here and turn it, you may just cause the whole assembly to spin inside the bore. And in that case, you're gonna have to put a driver on this side, a driver on the other side, and then just turn. But in the case of this knife, it's gonna loosen pretty easily without too much difficulty. And there it goes. So this screw has been removed, and there it is. And this is titanium. So now let's take off these 2 screws here. This is a T6. We'll get this in here. Now, these are pretty delicate, so just be careful. They're easy to drop, they're easy to lose. As you can see, these are steel and they stick to this bit driver because it's magnetic. But the exterior screws are all titanium. Okay, this one came out. There it goes. All right, now we're gonna remove. Now, before I take this next step, actually, I'm gonna carefully, I'm keeping this thing pinched. I'm gonna open this all the way and I'm gonna blue tape the blade now. So this is just so we don't cut ourselves. Just good old fashioned painter's tape. This stuff works great. So put it about like there. Roll it over. We're gonna need a little more on the tip. I came up short, but we're filming this live and that's how things are. When you tinker, you don't always do it right. So take another piece like this, and then we'll put this right about, sorry, put this right about here, and then fold it over. And then we've got a little bit of excess here. Just kind of fold that out of the way. That should be good enough. Not pretty, but it'll do the trick. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna loosen this scale. So I've loosened it, as you can see, and now we just need to take it off. So this is the underside. Here's what she looks like on the inside. And there's some things we'll discuss here. So what do we see here? Well, let's talk about it. We've got, this is a threaded barrel and this is a threaded barrel. So those screws we took out threaded directly into these holes. This right here is the pivot barrel. And it's also a threaded barrel similar to these, obviously bigger, that the pivot screw threaded into. This is a phosphor bronze washer that creates the friction surface between the blade tang here and the titanium scale. And that creates a smooth action, especially over time as the parts sort of burnish each other. Now, I'm gonna take this apart further. It's really unnecessary, and I can demonstrate where the problem comes to play. So this piece right here, this is your spring. And this spring is under tension right now. If I was to remove this blade off of this post, this spring is going to bend inwards like that. And in order for this knife to be put back together, the spring has to be pushed outwards like that, and then this piece has to be dropped down on top of this pivot. And let's just kind of show you what that all looks like. So from here, what I can do is I can remove the blade. And the easiest way to do that is to kind of walk it back and forth You see how it climbed already? See, it's ready to pop off. There it goes. So what do we have now? Well, here's our blade and tang. There's a washer there. There's a washer there. So we've now relieved the spring tension. As you can see, the spring has moved forward because it's no longer lining up with the back of the liner. Okay, so next thing we can do is remove this pivot assembly. So I'll just push that out. Here is the rest of that 3-piece assembly, and you can see that I'm unthreading that screw. But I'm not going to take that off because we're just going to need it to be screwed back in. So I'm going to screw those in, kind of pinch it tight, and put that in our parts tray. Now if I reverse this, you can see the other side of the knife. So let's take this apart. We're going to switch back to the T8. That's right here. Get that in there. One's kind of stubborn. And then this one. There we go. There they are. 00. Well, it says 002. It's supposed to. Yeah, that's a 2. Just not a very well written 2, but that's a 2 nonetheless. Okay, set that aside. Now, in order to fully disassemble this, we're going to switch back to the T6. We're going to unscrew these. And you can see your spring is also labeled 002. That's because these parts are all mated. I can't stress enough that this is a custom knife feature. This is not what you typically find on a modern traditional slip joint knife from my competition. So these barrels can poke right out of the spring, and there you go. So there's your spring. You can see this surface here is rubbing nice and glassy smooth from the tang of the knife, which is harder than this spring. This spring is obviously softer than the blade because the spring has to be able to bend, so it's softer. So here's your precision ground spring. Here's your barrels right here. And something to note, these barrels, let me wipe this down. These barrels index into this liner. You can see right there that hole is countersunk. So these actually sit. Let me see if I can get it. These actually sit inside these liners like that. And that's how this knife lines up in a precise way. If the screws threaded directly into the spring, then it would not have the same precision alignment that is achieved using these threaded barrels in those bores in the spring that countersink into these liners. So when you got it apart, you can go ahead and wipe everything down. We're gonna have to re-lubricate it, so we'll talk about that. So, all right, we're just gonna do things more or less in the reverse order. And I'm gonna have to take you over to the vise, and we're gonna have to figure out how to get mounted up over there. So we'll figure that out. So the first thing we're gonna do is secure this spring back on this part here. So in order to do that, we need to have our 2 threaded barrels. I'm putting them inside the spring. Where's our little barrel? Here it is. like this. Got our 2 threaded barrels in there. We're gonna put this, line this up here, and kind of push them in until we feel them seat in those countersinks. I'm gonna flip this over, and now I'm gonna put those 2 T6 screws back in here, the ones with the flat heads. They look like that on top. They're flat. Now, a word of caution, do not torque the ever-living heck out of these things because they're relatively small and you can break them. So just kind of get it in there, loose the first one. Same with the second one. Kind of get it in there. Oop. I'm applying downward pressure with my finger here to keep those barrels in place. I got something just spinning there. Let's see here. Let me try it like this. I got my finger there. There we go. It's the real deal, right? No editing. So I've got this screw down and I've got it tight, not super tight, just kind of twist and give it a little bit. Don't know how to describe that other than it goes by feel. So now that we've done that, now the next thing we need to do is get our pivot assembly handy, and we need to let's get a little bit of lubrication here. So I'm just going to grab this KPL and I'm just going to put a tiny dab right there like that. I'm going to put this through the hole like that. See that? Put another little dab just on the shaft of that screw. I'm going to take my washer. See, are we in the camera? Yeah, we are. Kind of hard to pick this up. Be careful, you can bend these. I'm going to drop the washer down there like that. All right, now we're just about ready to try to put the knife on. I'm sorry, the blade on. I'm going to take this washer, I'm going to take it off and set it in my parts bin and give this kind of clean this up a little bit. So we can give our washer here, if you can get it to spin a little bit. See if I can get it to spin, just to kind of get it in the lubrication. There we go, got a little bit of twisting going on. So it's lubricated. Now I'm gonna have to take you over to the vise, so let's do that. All right, everyone, we're here at the vise. So got a bench vise here, and I've got our assembly. I'm gonna set this down for a second. And I use, you guys might have a nicer setup than me, but I've just got these pieces of rubber that I've got here to protect the material from scratches from the jaws of the vise. So I'm going to try to do this here. Put these in like this, open this up, and I'll put that like that. Get this here. Sorry, you don't want to see my feet. So I'll get this. Doing this for the camera is not the easiest thing in the world, so bear with me. Slide this back, slide this back. Get it to bite there. Get that centered up a little better. Hope you guys can see that. All right, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna push this pivot down, not out, but make it kind of flat. Maybe I can zoom in. Well, here we go. Push that down like that. Now, you gotta have, this is the spine. It's oriented like this, and I'm gonna drive this spring that way with this and push the screw, the pivot up through the hole like that. I'm getting poked by the tip. I'm gonna put a little more blue tape on there. No sense in getting hurt. I added some blue tape to the tip. All right, here we go. Shove it forward. There it goes. Voila. By far the easiest way I've found to do it. So let's move back to the desk. All right, well, we're back at the desk. We've got the assembly put back together. The spring is back under tension, and we're gonna add a small amount of lubrication here because we need to install the other washer. If I can get it out, there we go. Like that. Maybe give it a little spin. Spread out that oil. Come on. Try not to bend it. Okay, now, next thing we're gonna do, and I guess while we've got this here, you know, I might as well show you how it works. So this is the half stop position. And when it closes, it rotates and the corner of the tang drives the spring outward until it snaps closed, and I got the tape in the way. But you can see now that the kick and the corner of the tang are the 2 points of rest that the spring has in connection with the tang. So let's go back to half stop. There's half stop. And there's all the way open. And you'll always see there's 2 points of contact, one here and one here. This gap in here is for lint and debris, somewhere for it to go. Even here, there's 2 points of contact. It's not super easy to see, but there's an arc here, so the tang of the spring rests on 2 feet. It keeps it from rocking. If you had a hump in the middle here, it could rock. So yeah, that's a slip joint. Deceptively complicated. Sure looks easy, but I can assure you that building these things precisely and designing them are anything but easy. So let's put it back together. So I'll put the knife in the open position for this, as good as any. And we need to reinstall this liner. So this is gonna drop right on top of here. And it's kind of finicky sometimes as far as clicking in. I just kind of give it a squeeze, and then we'll put the screws in it, and it should sandwich everything in. So let's start with I think we should work this way, here, here, here. So let's get one of these small ones, the T6, and get it going. Yeah, we're looking nice and tight there. Everything's lining up good. And then we'll get another T6. And then we'll get our pivot screw, which is here. Now let's talk about thread locker. I need to grab that. Sorry, I should have been prepared with that. Here it is. Things are real professional here in the Jack Wolf Knives studio. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this, I like to use a paper towel like this, and we also need an alcohol pad. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply thread locker to these threads. Before you apply thread locker to anything, you really should degrease it. And I'm a big fan of these BD alcohol swabs. They're just really well saturated alcohol pads. If you buy the budget ones, you'll notice the difference. So spend the extra money and get these BDs. I promise you it's worth it. So we gotta let that dry off for a second. And then a word on thread locker. This is the one I prefer. I've tried lots of different ones. Most people have the blue. If you look up the specifications for thread locker, the purple or the 222 is what they specify for fasteners under 1/4 inch. These fasteners are way under 1/4 inch. So I got this on Amazon. Give it a shake. What I typically do is you can either put some right on the paper towel and then just dip the threads in it. Let's give that dry that off a little bit. But I think we can get away with this applicator, just putting a little bit. Oh wait, I gotta, see that opens like that. So let's reposition this in my hand a little better. And let's see if we can get this to flow out of here. There we go, that's all we need. Just a little drip. Sorry, I'm trying to keep all this stuff in front of the camera. If you get any on your finger, wipe it off, see? Just like that. And then we want this fastener to go in this hole. We're gonna take this T10 and give her a come on. Not want to cooperate. There we go. Now you don't want to crank this down. You just want to twist it until it stops. That's my recommendation. You know, you'll have a chance to sort of set it to your liking, but if you want everything to stay nice and tight, that's kind of the way you go about it. So now we're almost fully reassembled. Now that we have this one in, let's back this one out and give it some purple Loctite. So we're gonna degrease this. Sorry, doing things off camera, my apologies. We're gonna degrease this, let it sit for a second. Kind of dry that off. All right, now we gotta put the thread locking compound on this fastener. There we go. Just a little bit there. You can even dab off the excess on your towel. So let's put that there. Move our towel out of the way. And screw it down till it stops. Do not need to crank on it. I like to just double check our screws, make sure that everything is, nothing's loose, like on these T6s. So it stops and I stop. It stops and I stop. Don't twist these once they stop. You don't need to do that. Because you can break them. Okay, last but not least, we need to reinstall our micarta. So obviously this is not the right piece for this side. We're gonna put this here like this, line it up, switch to the T8. Find it a little easier just to put them in the scale like that. Grab this one, put it here like this, line it up, screw it down until you feel it stop. I'll put a little tiny bit of torque on these because I feel like if anything was going to come loose, which I've never had them come loose, but if anything was going to come loose, it might be these. In fact, I need to loosen that one a little bit to get that other one in. There we go. There's that. And that. Everything fitting together real nice. Then here, we're going to do the opposite. Well, I guess we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So this goes here. Put that there. Put this here. And let's screw them down. Whoops. Okay, this one didn't go down all the way. Being a little stubborn. I think that one is interfering with the micarta a little bit. There we go. Yep, just had a little interference there. All this stuff is very tight. All the bores, everything is extremely precise. So you're not going to find really any slop or looseness. So, you know, if you have a touch for this, you know, just take it easy and be careful. But there we go. Everything looking really good. So now we're going to remove the tape. Do that here off camera for a second. Be careful not to cut yourself on this extremely well done hollow grind. Hard to do this with gloves on, that's for sure. There we go. If you are still watching this video, I'm proud of you because this could put anybody to sleep. So here we go. That's what you want. You want it to jump like that. You want your blade to be centered. You don't want there to be, see how we got a little bit of wiggle there? We got to tighten that pivot a little bit. So we'll address that in a second. But you don't want to tighten it so much that the blade won't jump. So let's tighten that pivot a little bit with the T10. Jumping good. Still want to tighten that a little bit more. I think it's this side. There it is. No blade play. No dragging throughout the pivot. And there we go. So now what you want to do is, because we put thread locker in this pivot, I know you want to play with the knife, but 24 hours let it sit and let that thread locking compound dry. And so that's it, guys. you know, one thing I didn't really show was how you would try to do it with the strength of your hand. Obviously, I used the vise so that I could get more leverage when applying force with the tang of the blade onto the spring. With this spring in this model, at least for me, it's too stiff to easily or even moderately just push that stuff while I'm holding the unit in my hand. So some of the models with a lighter spring, you can likely do it without the vise. I just find the vise to be easier. And I guess that's it. Thank you everyone for hanging in there. I appreciate it.